told to talk about scoops, how to bring in big scoops to the tab, which incidentally I have to say is a great publication, online publication. I saw it in Cambridge in May, I think it was, and I found myself reading it online, not just skimming it, but actually reading it. It was a real quality product, which is why I'm here tonight, because I do really think it's going places. And having talked to Jack tonight, just for 10 minutes, he's got some great ideas about how journalism works. And it's very, very simple. Journalism is a very simple craft. It's not a profession, which is why you can all do it now, if you want to do it. As long as you've got the right signposts, the right directions, that sort of thing. It's a craft that anybody can do. There's nothing complicated about journalism. And when journalism gets complicated, that's when it becomes unreadable. It's got to be simplified. And I'm going to take everything today back to basics, really, in just 10 or 15 minutes. But the anecdote I was going to tell you, basically, was one particular scoop. It wasn't my best scoop. It was long forgotten. Nobody will remember it. But I was quite pleased with it at the time because I was a freelance and trying to earn a bit of cash, and a bit like Morris, I used to whiz around the newsagents and pick up the newspapers at 5:30 in the morning, and then if there was a good one, sell it on to the Standard or the Sun or the News of the World. And there was one newspaper called the Wimbledon, I think it was the Wimbledon Informer, I think, and there was a one-paragraph story in it, just a one-paragraph story. And I think the headline was "Match Abandoned." And it said the soccer match between Tooting FC and Merton Wanderers was postponed after 32 minutes when all 22 players were sent off. Now, there's a drop intro. And I thought, well, there's a good story there. And there was. It turned out there was an almighty brawl, and even the referee had been knocked out. And it was the linesman that had to call a halt and send everybody off. So it made a page 3 lead in the News of the World. And in about 1987, 88. And a few £100 as well. So that was like, it was a scoop, but there was nothing complicated about getting that scoop. There was nothing. Being a scoop merchant on a newspaper, bringing in big stories, I've often likened to being like a striker for a football team. And it's not a question of standing in the box and having a graceful kick of the ball and shooting at the back of the net. And it's the same with journalism. It isn't about the flurry or flourish that you use with words. It's all about the preparation you've done beforehand. And that striker for England who scores the winning goal wasn't standing at that particular point in the box by accident. He was there because he was using intuition, experience, and because he read what was going on around him to be there at exactly the moment the ball landed and he scored the goal. It's exactly the same principle with bringing in what we're calling today scoops for any newspaper. It's all about opportunity meeting preparation, if you like. And that's what I'm talking about, signposts. The signposts I want to talk about are, where should I be looking? What should I be doing? Not on a national newspaper, although the same principles will apply, but on a student newspaper. We'll have a little look at this front page splash here. You might or might not remember it. It was in the Daily Mail, and it was Kieran Corcoran's story. He was in the room here at the back. Now, he was working, as you all know, on the tab, and we were having dinner, and he was telling me about this incredible story about girls at the university being offered £750 for their eggs. To create, that conjures up in all of us, doesn't it, the idea of some sort of master race or genetic engineering, of course. It's a classic Daily Mail story. Kieran, of course, saw that. He was straight on the telephone and it was the splash in the following day's paper, much to his credit. Now, how did he get that splash? Was he using big flurries with words? Was he posturing in some... No, he got it in a very prosaic way. He got it by looking at the tab, and he saw somebody had submitted a comment in a small form and a very unsensational way, and he read it, and out of that 1 or 2 paragraph comment piece there came big splash for the tab, and then a big splash for the Daily Mail. So that's how he did it. That's how I did my story on the football team, just by being aware and reading and looking. So going back to the student newspaper, I remember when I was at university, the student newspaper was poor, and I recognised it even then as being poor. There were all sorts of faults that students, we all make when we all start off in journalism. You've got to get rid of them and lose a lot of what you've practiced for A-levels and at university and how to write. You need to minimise your writing style. Use language that people would use in the pub or at home. A man was killed on a zebra crossing as he walked across the street today, point paragraph. He was 35-year-old Joe Bloggs of Acacia Avenue. He was a father of 2 children. Just tell the story. Don't get wrapped up in a typical student. We all had it. A typical student sort of problem was this tendency to overwrite, to use florid language. That's complicating journalism. And you're writing for yourself then, not for your reader. Always remember when you're writing your story that you're not the most important person and your writing style is irrelevant really. The simpler the better. And you're writing to show off the person you're writing about, not to show off your writing skills. And that's something that has to leave you very quickly to make the tab readable to your audience. Otherwise they won't read it and you won't get the hits, you won't get the advertisers. So that's the one thing that you start off with, a basic principle of simplistic writing style, but we'll develop that onto human interest stories when you can obviously be a little bit more colourful a little bit later. But as I say, let's bring it right back down to the nuts and bolts again as to how you're going to get scoops. Well, I would say for every 50 stories you might bring in, only one might be a scoop. It doesn't matter. The bread and butter of the student newspaper or any newspaper are the stories which involve people, human beings, names in other words, and pictures. That's what people get interested in on local newspapers in particular, and yours is a local newspaper. It's all about the people you know. If I read the tab tomorrow, you would be thinking, who will I recognise? Who will I find out about that I know what they're doing? What will it tell me about what's happening in my zone that I'm interested in? The people that I study with, and that sort of thing. So you've got to really form a contacts book. That's the first thing we learn. Is the contacts book. Build up contacts, and that is at universities. It will always be societies, obviously. That's one of the first ports of call I think I would make, is getting in touch with all that sort of myriad of societies, potholing and chess and football, sport. There's always something. There's hundreds of names instantly are available to you to fill the newspaper. And these days, of course, it's a lot easier because you've got people who can contribute online to you by email and also send you pictures because everybody's got a camera phone now. So you don't need a whole host of photographers. You've got a ready-made, as well as yourselves, the people on campus are walking journalists who will supply you with the stuff. But the crucial formula here on the tab and on any newspaper is not to make contact and then stand back and wait for them to feed you because it'll peter out. You've got to keep maintaining the contacts. That's the secret. You've got to keep going back. It's almost like if you were a salesman or something, you wouldn't just pick up the phone and say, I've got some fantastic garden furniture. Do you want it? You know, they say, well, not really, I don't suppose so. I'll take a number and I'll get back to you. You've got to really get back to in contact with all the people there and maintain a contact. You know, I don't know, you don't have an awful lot of money to spend on the tab, but it would be very useful to bring in everybody into the student union one day, hire a room for the day. You won't have money for liquor or anything like that, but you get money for tea and biscuits, and bring all the society together and say, look, we're all part of a team. This is a community. We can build the community. We can get people interested in you and you and you and your society and so on, but we need to know what you're doing. And then just ring round every week. Come on, let's have an email. And all you need is 200 words. The other myth is that you need thousands of words to fill a newspaper. The first thing that really surprised me was how little you need to fill, even a broadsheet. A story is only going to be, if it's a page lead, 500 words, 600 words, I would have thought.
Yeah, so about 800.
About 800. But it's not an awful lot. You could knock out 800 words of a society event in half an hour. You know, so you're not asking an awful lot of time from people. All you're doing is asking them to contribute. The other thing that I would be looking at is getting into the kind of the fabric of, as well as student life, I would say get into the fabric of the university itself, but not too much. If it's too establishment, then it'll be dull. But there needs to be part of a feeling of belonging, maybe to even the history of the institution. So, you know, links with, I don't know what they call them at different universities, but at board level, you need to be in touch with the senior administrators to find out when maybe a long retired professor of French or whatever dies. So you do a proper obituary on a man and his works and his life and his times and what he's contributed to the research and the quality of teaching at the university and the university's reputation. So when people are dipping in, it's not just all about the fripperies of life. There's a kind of a depth to it. You might even consider of having sort of furniture, if you like, in the online magazine every week. You know, sort of what was happening at the university 25 years ago, 50 years ago, that sort of thing. And so there's a kind of a history as well as a future. There's also a lot to be said, I think, in terms of gathering readers from not only telling people what's happened, but telling people what's going to happen. So you're an information resource. So you can say, you know, on campus this week, or if it's in town, and you know, at this particular building, there's going to be a play starring so and so and so and so and so and so and so. So you've got an information piece of something that's about to happen, but you've also got names of people and pictures, and then you follow it up with a review as well. So you've got the following week, you've got the review. How did that go? Is that worth going to see? Suddenly you've brought people in to an information game, and that's when you start becoming essential reading. When people think, I wrote that down. The reason why we went to see that play was because we read about it in the tab. And they have actually a very good reviewer as well. You know, find somebody who's very good at, you know, maybe an English student perhaps, who wants to do reviews, goes along, gets photographs of the cast, does a proper review. It's going to be a proper, you know, critical review, hopefully excelling the merits of the production or whatever, which encourages people to go along. So I would say don't only concentrate on the news, but concentrate on what you can inform people about, because that's what gets a lot of magazines read and a lot of people clicking on. I don't want to go on too much, but I would also look at finding a few very good feature writers who can write colourful pieces. The one thing that struck me about the tab in Cambridge was there was one guy who wrote a fantastically funny piece, and he was obviously a witty writer, and you know, just one feature like that a week that you know you're going to read it, and there will be somebody who you appreciate as a writer. That's why newspapers have columnists and so on. Newspapers are bought for a whole variety of reasons. Sometimes they're bought just the crossword, you know, literally, or a cartoon. So an art department, you know, get a cartoonist to come in just to illustrate stories. So there's a bit of wit on the page. Maybe a Sudoku or a crossword puzzle. But certainly you need somebody who's available to write a good colour piece and looking for the offbeat story. I mean, every university these days you'll have I should imagine you'll have a soldier who's maybe doing an army bursary or whatever. There was in my time, certainly. But these soldiers now will probably be Afghan veterans. You know, there'll be a story there from some guy aged 21 on an army bursary who's perhaps come back from 2 or 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan. You know, what a marvellous 2-page feature that would be. And so on. So anyway, look, I don't want to drone on too much, but all I would say is, from what I've seen of the tab, it is a brilliant, much to my surprise, a brilliant piece of information, and I think it's going to succeed. And I wish you all the best of luck. And thanks for listening to me. If you've got any questions, fire away.
Take any questions?
I'll keep your splash safe. Right.
No, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm allowed to. What kind of student stories, when you were at the News of the World, when you were on the editing side, what kind of student stories did you think about putting in the paper? Or
Student stories. I mean, like Morris was saying, that I don't know why that student stories tend to be ignored. I think it's because traditionally students are very lazy newspaper readers. They always were. I mean, they always say, "Oh, we read the Guardian, we read the Times." You know, you don't. You get up in the morning about 5 o'clock when the news agents have all closed. But I think that's why there was never a kind of a constituency that bought into newspapers. That kind of comes in your early 20s, late 20s, newspaper reading increasingly. I think, in actual fact, when I was talking at the union about this, I said within 15 years, hardly any newspapers will be read at all. It's becoming a middle-aged thing now. My daughter's at university. She's at King's, and she's a bright girl. Does she read newspapers? No, she doesn't. Never. You know, and neither do her friends. They go online and they go to the BBC website and all the rest of it. But student stories really passed us by, unless it was sort of the News of the World. I guess it might be Naughty Going on at the Maypole or something like that. That's about it.